I don't want to be any bigger.
Good afternoon. Welcome to today's edition of Taking the Field, coming to you live from the FloMarching studios in Austin, Texas. I'm Emily Tanner-Patterson, and I'm joined today by Jeremy Hunt. Jeremy, welcome.
Hi.
Jeremy, tell the folks at home a little bit about yourself.
I'm a drill designer for a living. I started in the drum corps activity in 1992, and since then I've done 23 years as a marching member, staff member, designer.
So a wealth of experience that you're bringing to the Flo Studios today.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
And for those of you who have not seen us thus far, I'm a percussion educator and arranger here in the Austin area. And I only have about 5 or 6 years of drum corps experience.
It's okay.
Sorry. All right. So it was an exciting night last night at DCI, Minnesota. Let's take a quick look at those results. So BD and Cabbies tight at the top. A bit of a surprise as we see BD coming towards the center of the country for the first time.
Yeah, super exciting to see the Cavaliers holding tough. You know, it's just them being super prepared. You know, the production being filled in, being developed. It seems to reflect in those visual effect and GE numbers.
Yeah, so we talked a little bit last night about, you know, it's July. We should be seeing mostly filled in productions, right?
Yeah, in the traditional sense, I know drum corps made a big push about 7 or 8 years ago about coming out prepared and coming out finished. And you should see mostly finished productions, but I think you're only seeing the versions they want you to see. You know, they're showing you their version A. So version A is filled in, but we might see version B, C, and D coming up.
So kind of like we've got the rough cut and now we're going to make the final edits?
Yeah, definitely a rough cut idea.
All right, and then we talked last night about the 8 through 13, even 14 cores, really a tight pack. I don't want to say at the bottom, but in the fight for the top 12 finalist spots.
Yeah, if you're anywhere in that kind of 14 through 9 range, and sitting with these scores like this, you're in a very competitive realm, and that's a realm that I've been used to as a designer a few times. You just got to keep yourself in that hunt so you can be rewarded. And I think it's really exciting looking at the Colts at a 71.3. That's super exciting. I know they brought on Howard Weinstein a couple years ago, and they're definitely getting payoff from that. Crossman Phantom, Blue Stars 1.75, I believe. Yeah. And those are all super tight. So it's super exciting to see that competitive, because, you know, there's usually two big competitions: who's going to win and who's going to be 12. And that 12 spot looks like it could be any of 4 or 5 cores.
So let's take a look at the current rankings. These are compiled by DCI. Top 15, and they're compiled by averaging the last 3 scores. So we mentioned last night, some of those rankings are a little bit wonky right now because of the 4th of July holiday. Some groups are carrying scores in from last week, potentially even the week before. What else might have skewed that last 3 average?
A big thing, DCI sometimes does partial panels in the early half of the season.
And by panel, you mean?
Judging panel. Mm-hmm. So a full panel, there's a full GE panel, full music panel, a full visual panel. Sometimes they will chop off a visual or a music, and then that skews to a core strength depending whoever's there. So if somebody has a really strong strength in music versus somebody that has a weakness in music, and they're going on at that show together, those spread out a little more than you would expect. And I think that might be some of the wonkiness in the scores.
Yeah, so let's take a look at the most recent score. Wow, just really tight in those top 6. And Blue Devils maybe not actually 6th place right now. Their most recent score would put them in 3rd behind SCV and Bluecoats. But as we mentioned, just still really, really tight in these islands.
Yeah, I don't know if I've seen a top 6 this close together in a really, really long time. Usually you start to break up into packs of 2 or 3, and it starts to spread out a little bit. But for those top 6 all to be so close together, it's super unusual. And it's also super unusual to see Blue Devils, based on these rankings, as 6th, but you know, they're 6th, but they're also 3rd at the same time. So
always the fun part of this part of the season, where the cores are starting to really come together and go head to head.
Yeah.
Well, before we take a look at tonight's schedule, we have a brief clip from the Bluecoats tenor line.
What's up? My name is Charlie. I'm the section leader with the Blue Q this year, and I'm going to play a little bit of our Part 3 tenor feature for you guys. So it starts out, we got a little bit of a scrape pattern. Starts with a paradiddle and then just a bunch of scrapes. Here's that same thing a little bit slower. Starting right there, that's 2 bars right there. So starting there, we have a couple more scrapes, and we have a paradiddle tap and a single part. So, and from there we have a bar of triplets that starts with 1 count of check through the roll. So from there we have a 9-lit section. Sounds like this. On the round. Here's that just a little bit slower. And after the 9-lit part, it goes into an 8th note section. This is where we start marking time. And the whole thing is here's that same thing, just a little bit slower. Yeah.
Always fun to see how the nuts and bolts are put together, huh, Jeremy?
Yeah, just a little slower.
All right, let's take a look at the schedule for tonight. We'll be going live to the field in just a few minutes for the national anthem at 7 o'clock, and that will be followed by a sound sport competition. Jeremy, what is sound sport?
Sound Sport came out a couple years ago as kind of DCI's outreach to create more drum corps activity without having the mass need to have 3 or 4 buses and 2 trucks. So drum corps can come in with unusual instrumentation. They can do 1 or 2 shows and kind of put their foot in the water just to expand the drum corps' outreach and drum corps being introduced to new groups and new levels.
So it'll be interesting to see what those designers have come up with and what those kids are doing tonight.
Yeah, definitely.
They'll be followed, Sound Sport will be followed by Heat Wave at 7:38, then Music City, Jersey Surf, and a brief intermission.
Then Spirit of Atlanta, the Cadets, Boston Crusaders, Blue Coats, and the Carolina Crown.
And all of those corps that we just mentioned, they competed last night, Jeremy, at Crown Beat in Lexington, South Carolina. Let's take a look at how that competition shook out. So we had Music City coming in. That's a newer corps from my home state of Tennessee.
Awesome.
Coming in at a 61.85. Spirit of Atlanta was just above them, well, quite a bit above them, 10 points at 71.4. The Cadets at 77.4, so quite a big spread there in the bottom 3 corps. Boston Crusaders coming in at 80.9. Carolina Crown 81.35, and Blue Coats on top at 82.7. Jeremy, what stands out to you when you look at those scores?
The 2 big things that jump out at me right off the bat are the Cadets. You know, hanging tough at a 77.4. You know, they had a lot of staffing changes.
A little bit of a rocky spring, perhaps.
Yeah, they were working through some things, and it's great to see them doing so well and hanging tough with those groups at the top. And also the Boston Crusaders, they made a big push 2 years ago, hired a whole new staff, kind of overhauled everything that they were doing top to down with the organization, and they've taken a very professional approach with everything they want to do, and they're getting professional results, and that's what that score reflects.
So do you think we're going to see all these groups again in just a few minutes? You think anything's going to change tonight?
We'll see. With this time of year, you're really kind of looking at what the end of the season is going to look like. These big regionals start to hit next week. I don't know if it's going to change much tonight. I know they're in a great stadium. I'm sure it's going to be hot and humid, but it's going to be a great night of drum corps in Orlando.
Well, that brings our pre-show edition of Taking the Field just about to a close. Thank you so much for joining us. And before we go to the field, we want to remind you that we'll be back after the show with some analysis of what happens tonight. We're going to take it out with a little clip of the Carolina Crown Front Ensemble.